Howdy Moz fans, and welcome to another edition of Whiteboard Friday. This week it is all about Google Penguin. So Google Penguin is an algorithm that's been with us for a few years now, designed to combat link spam specifically. And after many, many years of saying this was coming, Penguin 4.0 rolled out on Friday, September 23rd. It is now real time in Google's algorithm, Google's core algorithm, which means that it's constantly updating. So there's a bunch of changes. What we're going to talk about today is what Penguin 1.0 to 3.x looked like and how that's changed as we've moved to the Penguin 4.0 model. And then we'll cover a little bit of what the rollout has looked like and how it's affecting folks' sites, and specifically some recommendations. Thankfully, we don't have a ton, but important to understand, if people ask you about Penguin, people ask you about the penalties that used to come from Penguin, you've got to know that back in the day, Penguin 1.0 to 3.x, it used to run intermittently. So every few months, right, Google would collect a bunch of information, they'd run the algorithm, and then they'd release it out in the wild. It would now be in the search results. And that is the only time, when that rollout happened, that was the only time, pretty much the only time, that penalties from Penguin specifically would be given to websites or removed. This meant that a lot of the time, you had this slow process where if you got penalized by Penguin, you did something bad, you did some sketchy link building, you went through all the process, let's say you went through all your processes of getting that penalty lifted, Google said, fine, you're in good shape, next time Penguin comes out, your penalty is lifted. You could wait months. You could wait 6 months or more before that penalty got lifted. So a lot of fear here and a lot of slowness on Google's side. Penguin also penalized, much like Panda, right, where it looks at a portion of the site, right? These pages maybe are the only ones on this whole domain that got bad links to them. But Penguin, old Penguin, did not care. Penguin would hit the entire website, would basically say, no. You're spamming to those pages? I'm burying your whole domain. Every page on your site is penalized and will not be able to rank well. And those sorts of penalties are very, very tough for a lot of websites. That, in fact, might be changing a little bit with the new Penguin algorithm. Old Penguin also required a reconsideration request process, often in conjunction with disavowing old links, proving to Google that you had gone through the process of trying to get those links removed. It wasn't often enough to just say, I've disavowed them. You had to tell Google, hey, I tried to contact the site where I bought the links, or I tried to contact the private blog network, but I couldn't get them to take it down, or I did get them to take it down, or they blackmailed me and forced me to pay to them to take it down, and sometimes people did pay, and Google said that was bad, but then sometimes would lift the penalties, and sometimes they told them, okay, you don't have to pay the extortionist, and we'll lift the penalty anyway. Very manual process here, right? And finally, Penguin 1.0 to 3.x was really designed to remove the impact of link spam on search results, but doing it in a weird way. Well, in a somewhat weird way. They were doing it basically through penalties that affected entire websites that had tried to manipulate the results, and by creating this fear that if I got bad links, I would be potentially subject to Penguin for a long period. I have a theory here. It's a personal theory. I don't want you to hold me to it, but I believe that Google specifically went through this process in order to collect a tremendous amount of information on sketchy links and bad links through the disavow file process. Once they had a ginormous database of what sketchy and spammy bad links looked like that they knew Webmaster had manually reviewed and had submitted through the disavow file and thought could harm their sites and were paid for, or just links that were not editorially acquired, they could then machine learn against that giant database. Once they've acquired enough disavows, great. Everything else is gravy, but they needed to get that huge sample set. And they needed it not to just be things that Google, could identify, but things that all of us distributed across the hundreds of millions of websites on the planet could identify. Using those disavow files, Google can now make Penguin more real time. So challenges here. This is too slow. It hurt too much to have that long process. And so in the new Penguin 4.0, and going forward, this runs as part of the core algorithm, meaning as soon as Google crawls and indexes a site and is able to update that in their databases, that site's penalty is either lifted or incurred, right? So this means that if you get sketchy links, you don't have to wait for Penguin to come out. You could get hurt tomorrow. It is also the case that Penguin does not necessarily any longer penalize an entire domain. It still might. It could be the case that if lots of pages on a domain are getting sketchy links or some substantive portion or Google thinks you're just too sketchy, they could penalize you. And remember, Penguin is not the only algorithm that can penalize websites for getting bad links. There's manual spam penalties and there's other forms of spam penalties too. So Penguin is not alone here, but it may be simply taking the pages that earn those bad links and discounting those links, or using different signals, weighting different signals to rank those pages or search results that have lots of pages with sketchy links in them. It is also the case, and this is not 100% confirmed yet, but some early discussion between Google's representatives and folks in the webmaster and SEO community has revealed to us that it may not be the case that Penguin 4.0 and moving forward still requires the full disavow and the whole reconsideration requests process. That's not to say that if you incur a penalty, you should not go through this, but it may not be the case that that's the only way to get a penalty lifted, especially in two cases, no fault cases, meaning you did not get those links, they just happened to come to you, or specifically negative SEO cases. This is, I want to bring up Marie Haynes, who does phenomenally good work around spam penalties, along with folks like Shah Menz and Alan Bleiweiss, who all three of them have been concentrating on Google penalties, along with many, many other SEOs and webmasters. But Marie wrote an excellent blog post detailing a number of case studies, including a negative SEO case study where the link penalty had been lifted on the domain. And you can see her results of that. She's got some nice visual graphs showing the keyword rankings changing after Penguin's rollout. I urge you to do that, and we'll make sure to link to it in the transcript of this video. And finally, Penguin 4.0 is a little bit different from Penguin 1 to 3 in that it's still designed to remove the impact of spam links on search results, but it's doing it by not counting those links in the core algo or by less strongly weighting links in search results where many folks are earning spammy links. So for example, your PPC, your porn, your pills, your casino searches, those types of queries may be places where Google says, you know what, we don't want to interpret, because all these folks have nasty links pointing to them, we are going to weight links less. We're going to weight other signals higher. Maybe it's engagement and content and query interpretation models and non-link signals that are offsite, all those kinds of things, clickstream data, whatever they've got. And we're going to push down the value of either these specific links or all links in the algo as we weight them on these types of results. So this is what we know so far. We definitely will keep learning more about Penguin as we have more experience with it. But we also have some information on the rollout. So when it started on Friday, September 23rd, few people noticed any changes. In fact, the first few days were pretty slow, which makes sense. It fits with what Google said about the rollout being real time and them needing time to crawl and index and then refresh all this data. Right? So until it rolls out across the full web and Google's crawled and indexed all the pages, gone through processing, we're not going to get there. So little effect that same day. But more SERP flux started 3 to 5 days after. That next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we saw very hot temperatures starting that next week in Mozcast. And Dr. Pete has been detailing those on Twitter. As far as SEOs noticing, yes, a little bit. So I asked the same poll on Twitter twice, once on September 27th and once on October 3rd, so about a week apart. And here is the data we got. Nope, nothing yet, went from 76 to 72%. So a little less than a quarter of SEOs, a little more than a quarter of SEOs have noticed some changes. A lot of folks noticing rankings went up. Moz itself, in fact, benefited from this. Why is that the case? Well, anytime a penalty rolls out to a lot of other websites, bad stuff gets pushed down, and those of us who have not been spamming move up in the rankings. Of course, in the SEO world, which is where Moz operates, there are plenty of folks getting sketchy links, right, and trying things out. And so they were higher in the rankings. They moved down, and so Moz moved up. We saw a very nice traffic boost. Thank you, Google, for rolling out Penguin. That was makes our audience development team's metrics look real good. 4% and then 6% said they saw a site or page get penalized in their control, and 2% and then 1% said they saw a penalty lifted. So penalty lifted, still pretty light, but there are some penalties coming in. There's a few of those. And then there's the nice benefit of if you don't link spam, you do not get penalized. And every time Google improves on the Penguin algorithm, every time they improve on any link spam algorithm, those of us who don't spam benefit. It's an awesome thing, right? Instead of cheering against Google, which you do if you're a link spammer and you're very nervous, you get to cheer for Google. And certainly Penguin 4.0 is a good time to cheer for Google. It's brought a lot of traffic to a lot of good websites, pushed a lot of sketchy links down, and we will see what happens as far as disavows, reconsideration requests for the future. All right, everyone, thanks for joining. Look forward to hearing about your experiences with Penguin, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Whiteboard Friday. Take care.